Yes. Motion passes. Can everyone hear me? You can. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read the formal public hearing rules. The City Planning Commission has established certain rules governing procedures to be followed at public hearings. Before speaking, each person shall give their name, address, and state whom he or she is representing. Opponents for the proposal will speak first for a period of 10 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents or other interested parties will speak second for a period of 15 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Proponents will be allowed a period of 6 minutes for rebuttal. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents will not be allowed to rebut. No material, written matter, photographs, maps, etc. will be accepted by the commission or its staff at any time during this public hearing. This procedure shall be followed except at such time when the presiding officer shall, the approval of commission members present, extend such time. With that, we'll start with our first order of business, street name change 00622.
Street name change 00622 is a request to rename Cadillac Street from I-610 to Park Island Drive to Ron Eagle Way. McDonald 35 opened in 1917 and was the first secondary education institution for Black students in New Orleans. Since its inception, it has been one of a handful of high-performing public high schools in the city of New Orleans. This request would not result in any street fragmentation. This request would honor the legacy of excellence that the school has created within the New Orleans community. Therefore, staff recommends approval of this request. Staff would also like to note several corrections. The docket number is SNC 00622 and not SNC 00623, as mentioned in the staff report. Staff also notes that the city's GIS department has requested to use the suffix of street instead of way.
Thank you. I only have one card for this docket. That's a card in opposition for Loretta Wiltz. Could please state your name and address. Up to the microphone.
Loretta Wiltz, 4220 Cadillac. Here. Loretta Wiltz, 4220 Cadillac. I walked from the Park Island. I live close to Park Island. I walked from Park Island to the end of Cadillac Street 610 on a beautiful Sunday. February the 4th was nice and sunny. I'm 77 years old, so my legs are not good. And I had a lot of steps to go up and down, but our neighborhood feels like, why change the name of our street for the mascot of a school? We all know that 35 is an excellent school. I have 2 daughters that graduated from 35. One was a Miss 35. But we don't see why we have to change the name of our street over a mascot. Most of the streets in New Orleans were changed because of someone who contributed something to New Orleans. 35 have students that contributed, but every school in the city has people that graduated that contributed to the city of New Orleans. So the residents living on Cadillac Street, or where Cadillac Street is a cross street between them, like the side of their property is part of Cadillac, are requesting that the street name not be changed to Ronnie. McDonald 35 has always been a school of excellence. The school has never been a problem to the neighborhood. It is a beautiful school, but to change the name of our school to the mascot of a school, we do not agree with. Why change the name of our street to accommodate someone and our group who are seeking to recognize the school? Cadillac is a familiar, easy to spell name. Ron Eagle Way is not. Our biggest problem is the mail. When a change of address is done, post office, the change was made a limited of time. Not getting certain mail in time in a fashionable manner would cost us late fees. There are still people in the world who do not have computer and internet services and do not want their business online due to hacking, and I am one of them. This is only a few of the businesses we have to have our name changed. You know, the post office
Ms.
will do
Wilson,
something.
time. It's time.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
now I have, you said you're not accepting anything, but I went from door to door and I have 45 names on this paper where people are opposed to changing in the school name.
Okay,
Make a motion to suspend the rules to accept that submission.
thank you. Do I have a second?
Witchery will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ma'am, before you leave,
Yes,
Madam Chair, can I ask for one? So the paper you just read from,
Uh-huh.
you gave some remarks and then you read from the paper in your hand there. Is that a letter from the neighborhood group or what? I didn't get, that was a letter.
this is something I wrote and I presented to the people to sign the petition.
Okay.
Why we're protesting it. This has nothing to do with the school. The school is a beautiful school.
Thank you.
Right.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question of staff while we're at it? So I was looking at the map, but I couldn't exactly see, and I know we have bounding streets from I-610 to Park Island Drive. Is that the entirety of Cadillac Street or is that only a portion of it?
Yes, that's the entirety of the street.
That's the whole street. It doesn't go anywhere beyond I-610 or Park Island Drive.
Correct.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for staff? Or a motion? Those were all the cards I had on here. There's a vote on the machine for the motion to suspend the rules. Let's just close the circle on that unless I'll click yay, please. Staff's recommendation is for approval. Are there any additional questions or a motion?
Are we gonna get a fresh screen here? I was gonna make a motion. Make a motion. Okay, well, I'll just make my motion. I'd like to commend schools that contribute to our community, but I agree with Ms. Wells. And I would hate to burden the neighbors with all the renaming responsibilities. And if there is a movement with the school to want to honor their mascot, they can go the route of the City Planning Commission's honorary street naming policy, which we adopted to address this very issue of proliferation of name changing on streets, street map, or purposes of honoring people and in this instance, a group or school. So I move for denial.
I second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Brown, seconded by Commissioner Joshi Gupta. Is there any discussion?
I have a question for staff. So since this came from a city council office, was any community engagement done? Any notices given, submitted to those residents in the area? Was a meeting held?
The City Planning Commission sends out a notice for this hearing. And we did receive, I think, 3 comments that are attached to your report that were all opposed to the street renaming. In this case, I do think the council member sent out his own letters, but would have received the comments himself rather than to us.
Clarification, Paul, I just looking at the report, and I only see one comment.
They were received after the deadline.
Those comments were in opposition.
Correct.
Is there any further discussion?
So I have a question for staff, which is how has staff assessed the types of concerns that we heard and that we saw in these materials about mail delivery and people's address being changed and businesses and whatnot? I mean, how do those go into this? What's the staff's evaluation of that?
The staff uses the criteria in the CPC's rules, policies, and procedures, which really don't address the inconvenience of having to change your address. We do look to what the proposed street name is to see if it's an appropriate name in terms of not having punctuation, having a limited number of characters, etc. No duplication, no fragmentation,
So those,
mostly technical criteria,
so those are the only things that staff looks at, because that's what's in our rules now.
correct?
Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll call the question. Thank you. Motion for denial passes. Next up is street name change 00722.
Street name change 00722 is a request to rename the entirety of North Russell Street as Shirley Taylor Way from Jordan Avenue to DeBrule Street. Per Councilmember Thomas's letter, the late Shirley Taylor was an educator for over 40 years and served as beloved principal of Alfred Lawless Junior and Senior High School up until Hurricane Katrina. Mrs. Taylor was also a community and civil rights activist and prominent resident of the Lower Ninth Ward. This request would not result in any street fragmentation. This request honors the legacy of an impactful and honorable school administrator. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the request, subject to one waiver. Staff recommends that the applicant be granted a waiver of the length of time to honor a person that has been deceased for 4 years instead of the required 5 years. Staff also received several technical update requests after the staff report was already released. The city's GIS office requests to rename the street to Shirley Taylor Street instead of Way, and to update the staff report for consistency to include the entirety of North Russell Street from Jordan Avenue to DeBrule Street.
Thank you. I have one card for Dariel King.
Good afternoon, Chair. First of all, happy Valentine's Day, ladies. My name is Dario.
You do not get away with that.
Mr. Steve. Jonathan, you know I got you covered. All right, my name is Dario King. I'm the community liaison for the Alpha Lawless High School Alumni Association. My address is 1517 Harrison Avenue. It's nice to see your faces again today. As we have been saying this now for a couple of months, we ask you to honorably to accept this proposal from us in honor for our late and great principal, Ms. Shirley Taylor. It just so happened today, and he's gonna beat me up, that we do have another well-known alumni that was also under Ms. Shirley Taylor tutelage, and which is Mr. Honorable Ed Shorty, our constable in Second District. Once again, we ask that you please accept this proposal. We're ready to do whatever it has to do to help keep the street clean. We're ready to do whatever it has to do to keep our minority children to get a better education. All we do is ask you to say yes and let us run away with it and do what we have to do for the grace of the children and the stigmatude of all minority educators that have done and donated to this great city of we call New Orleans. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The only card I have on file, is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this request? Not. Are there any comments or questions of the commission for staff?
Quick question for staff. Is this on? Why did you recommend changing it from way to street?
That was a request from the city's GIS department.
Is way,
So I think that the GIS department likes to reserve way for a cul-de-sac or a shorter street.
smaller street? Okay. No.
That sort of brings me to my question. How many addresses are affected by this?
I think it's 110 lots.
And what kind of outreach was made to those residents and
We send a postcard to each property owner and resident of the street, although there are a lot of vacancies along that street.
okay, thank you.
I'm going to make a motion to approve staff recommendation with one waiver.
Second by Commissioner Stewart.
I have a first by Commissioner Witry, seconded by Commissioner Stewart. Is there any discussion?
Is there a reason that we are not using the honorable mention for all of these situations?
Yeah, that would have to be initiated by the city council. It wouldn't even come through you if it has been a challenge to get people to use that instead of the official street name change.
Because I feel that this is the trend that's happening. And of course, we want to honor, wonderful citizens of the city. But I see this as a trend going forward.
Yeah, I mean, in each case, when we consult with them in the pre-application phase, we do tell them about the honorary street name. And we try to promote it as an alternative, but in many cases, they still wish to proceed with the official street name change. The honorary does have a 5-year limit according to the city code, so that is sometimes a thing that they don't like.
And it can be renewed.
I would imagine so. Maybe, I don't know if the city attorney would want to weigh in on that. Whether a honorary street name can be renewed after the 5-year limit.
I would need to look into that. I'll get back to y'all.
As I recall, because we've seen this docket before, weren't there a number of vacant lots on this street? So although there were 110 lots, there were only like a fraction of actual homes that were affected. Is that accurate?
Yes, I think Mr. King might have actually had a count on that.
Mr. King, do you recall? Would you mind coming up?
We still send the notice
It was-
regardless.
It was 12.
12. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
I would like to follow up on Commissioner's question on the honorary. I know I bring this up a lot, but the councils do renew every few years. And when we did this as a recommended alternative so that we weren't changing the street map and affecting addresses, and wanting also to honor remarkable and contributory citizens. What kind of outreach do we have to educate the council on this being a very good alternative and a great way to honor citizens that we like to? Have we done some outreach with councils as they?
Yes, as they approach us with their interest in renaming the street. And the council staff is very receptive to that input. I think the issue is when they go back and meet with the group that's interested in changing the name.
Okay, so we still have a motion on the table for approval and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I really hate to vote against something that appears that I'm voting against honoring a very remarkable person, citizen, but I do see a trend here that I worry about, that we are setting ourselves up for this continuing to happen before we educate the council on what the alternative that we explored as being the better alternative is. So I will be voting against this hesitantly.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Is there any other discussion? If not, I'll call.
Commissioner Brown, I feel like you have valid points, but it's also, we have vetted this process and so has staff, that this has come before us at least over the last 5-6 months. And so as a commission, we're supposed to vet each application and actually see how it actually works with the code. But I feel confident in approving to move forward because we've had 5 to 6 months. They've come back, we've talked about the honorable, they've come back again. And so I just feel like in this particular situation, we need to be able to move forward with this application.
I just disagree. I'm gonna stick with my vote.
I would like to ask if it's possible, the applicant, I know your original application did not involve changing the entire street name. Am I correct? Your original application did not involve,
Yes, originally it was gonna be from Renee Street to Fast Domino's Way.
and did you consider the honorable?
Man, we're not considering honorable.
Did you ever consider it, or
No,
did
ma'am.
anyone tell you about
Yes,
it?
ma'am. They told us about honorable. We are set on making this a permanent honor for Miss Shirley Taylor. There was nothing temporary about what she done with us. It was a permanent fixture. And as you can walk around the city, you will see many of students that was influenced by Miss Shirley Taylor.
Thank
I
you, Mr.
completely agree with you on, on honoring this wonderful woman. I was just wondering what changed from partial to the full.
What changed was your committee asked us to consider to do the whole street. We went into a board meeting. We did an emergency board meeting, and the board decided that instead of trying to go against you, we rather work with you. And so we decided just to do the whole street.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Well, I just want to say one thing because my last vote was against, and want to explain my vote here, but express something in general. So I'm going to support the motion because I feel like the applicant, it's not a mascot, it's a very worthy person. And two, we did ask them to do the entirety of the street because I believe we have a somewhat policy, or at least an informal policy, against partial streets, because then really, so I'm going to vote in favor, but also say I think we need to reconsider our rules to add some of the additional elements. We've heard that we really only look at technical aspects, and I think we need to look at the effect on the homeowner and business on the street, among others. So I am going to vote in favor of the motion, but look really skeptically at a lot of the applications in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Steve. And with that, there's no more discussion. We'll call the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At its November 15th, 2022 meeting, the City Planning Commission recommended approval of the requested street name change. But since that time, a question was raised about whether the commission should also have considered a segment of Press Drive on the lakeside of Leon C. Simon that is not a city street, though it does appear like one. Law Department noted that the CPC's rules do not explicitly limit the commission's street renaming recommendations to public streets, and they expressed concern that the figures shown in the previous staff report did not show the extension of the street name change through the intersection with Leon C. Simon, where there is a wide neutral ground. Therefore, the staff asked the commission to reconsider the street renaming to include these additional areas. And the staff further recommends that the commission suspend the rules to waive the public notice requirement. In this case, Suno is the only property owner that would be impacted.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question of staff?
Sure.
Make sure I understood.
Go for it.
So this is one we did already, and we assured ourselves that it was the entirety of the street. I think we were on the 7th floor upstairs. So we thought it was the entirety of the street, and now we've discovered there's little pieces of the street. And so this is kind of cleanup to make it apply to the entirety of the street.
Yes.
And to confirm, I have no cards for this reconsideration. So with that, looking for a motion.
I move. I move approval
Thank you.
in accordance with staff recommendation.
Is it two separate motions? One to suspend the rules?
Oh, yeah, we can do it at one motion. I move to suspend the rules and accept staff's recommendation.
For a second? Commissioner Steve made a motion to suspend the rules and approve per staff recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Witry. There's no discussion. We'll call the question.
Just one question. So we're suspending the rules to allow for a waiver of public notice.
Right.
Okay.
Motion passes. Next up is zoning docket 00323.
Oh, Madam Chair, I think now you would vote to approve the reconsideration.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Steve had thrown them together. Can you make another motion to approve reconsideration?
Oh, sorry, were they together?
Yeah, they
Oh, I
were.
didn't
They were.
realize that. Okay.
Yeah, that was to suspend the rules, to waive notice and accept staff recommendation.
Very efficient. On to zoning docket 00320.
Zoning docket 003-23 is a request for a conditional use to permit a hotel in a CBD 5 urban core neighborhood lower intensity mixed use district. The existing site at 604 Julia Street is developed as a 4-story structure containing 6 guest units and a commercial art gallery located on the ground floor fronting Julia Street. The historic site was built in 1832 as part of the Julia row houses, known for federal style architectural design developed in the 1830s. Staff is reviewing revised site plans detailing the layout of the proposed hotel, including guest rooms, square footage for each of the 4 levels, amenities on premises, and commercial space. The staff recommends deferral to the February 28th, 2023 City Planning Commission hearing.
Thank you. I have no cards. Looking for a deferral to the February 28th meeting.
Make a motion for deferral.
Second by Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart. If there's no discussion, we'll call the question. Motion for deferral passes. Next up is zoning docket 0053.
Zoning docket 523 is a request to establish an affordable housing plan development at this site, which is along South Rendon Street, just off Canal Street in Mid-City. It is zoned HURD2 two-family residential district, which is the zoning district that encompasses much of this part of town and allows for singles and doubles, but also allows for establishment of what are called affordable housing plan developments, which allow for a multifamily to be built where they otherwise would not be permitted. And that is conditioned on the public benefit of some of the units, 10% being affordable units. And so this particular site is the former Seton Academy Gym, which is opposite from Morris Jeff School. It has been vacant since before Hurricane Katrina, and the proposal now is to adapt it for use as a 24-unit multifamily residence. This was considered by the Planning Commission at a previous meeting. It was deferred, and it was deferred primarily for two reasons. One is that a significant amount of the public comment involved whether Morris Jeff School had any future use of the property and whether it had submitted any public comments, comments on the record for that. And I believe the principal of this school is present today, can speak to the school's interest or non-interest in the property. And then the second was to allow for an answer to the question of whether the commission could require a higher percentage of units to be affordable. We've consulted with the law department and have determined that no, the requirement of 10% is set in law and cannot be modified upwards. And so the staff continues to recommend approval of this application subject to 4 exceptions and 11 provisos.
Thank you. I have a number of cards. First, Mr. Narinda Gupta. Edwin Shorty.
Dr. Gupta had to leave out suddenly to go head to the hospital. My name is Edwin Shorty, 650 Poydras, Suite 2515, representing the developer in this matter. At the commission's last meeting, there were some questions about whether or not we can increase the number of affordable housing units in this project. We have 2. We looked at the numbers and we're not able to increase those numbers based on a number of different factors. This matter has been pending for some time, and during that time, the costs of construction have significantly increased. The cost of insurance has significantly increased, and there's a shortage of labor to work on the project. Because of those factors, adding additional affordable housing units makes the project unworkable. I would say that there's always, there's nothing wrong with focusing on the need for affordable housing units in the city of New Orleans. We all know that there's a need for that. But there's also a need for additional housing, and every unit is not going to be affordable housing. There are people who will not qualify for certain affordable housing units, like your police officers, your teachers, your nurses, and they need housing just as much as anyone else. So I don't think we should be in the business of saying that we're going to discard certain projects because they don't have a higher percentage of affordable housing than what is already required by law. And this meets the ordinances and has the required amount of affordable housing units. That being said, relative to Morris Jeff School, I hate to sound any particular way about a thing, but the developer owns the property. I'd be hard pressed to find out what plans Morris Jeff has for a property that they don't own. You know, you can want to do a lot with your neighbor's property, but if you don't own it and haven't purchased it, then I think you're really limited on what your desires are going to be relative to that property. Now, that being said, the developer is willing to work with them to the degree that there's commercial space available in the project. They are willing to have that discussion about what do you need if you want to involve yourself in renting some of this property. That's not off the table, but to say that the developer is just going to say, yeah, either Morris Jeff can just have it or buy my property, that's not going to happen. But we do believe that we have met all of the requirements of the ordinances and do have the recommendation. urge favorable passage. Thank you.
Thank you.
On one side note, I do want to thank you for what you did on a completely separate note. I didn't realize what else was on the agenda. I was taught by Shirley Taylor at Lawless and Emmett Bashfield at Southern University at New Orleans. And as a current member of the Southern University Board, thank you for doing what you did in recognizing Dr. Emmett Bashfield.
Thank you. Next is Maxwell Rodulo.
Hi, Commissioners. Maxwell Chardulo with the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center, 1340 Poydras Street. We're here in support of this development. I'm also here to provide some added context about the Affordable Housing Plan development process as someone who advocated for it to be included in the CZO as part of the broader Smart Housing Mix ordinances passed in 2019. Everyone knows we're experiencing an affordable housing crisis. We've been in that crisis since at least Katrina, and it has only deepened since COVID. Part of the reason we're in that crisis is because our government at all levels has failed to fund affordability. There's simply not enough public subsidy around to build more affordable housing, and the market will not create it on its own. So the goal of the Smart Housing Mix was twofold. First, to ensure that when an affordable housing developer does secure some of that limited public subsidy, that and wants to build here, that we help streamline that process so they don't get caught up in red tape and lose their funding. Those are the developments that go above and beyond the 10% affordability required by the CZO because they have additional funding to help cover those costs. The second goal, which is more relevant here, was to ensure that even when a developer doesn't have any public subsidy available, we're still incentivizing some affordable units as well. And the 10% requirement for affordable units in this case was based on a market study that was done before the ordinances went into effect to figure out how we could get the absolute most number of units and still have a development pencil out, even if there wasn't public subsidy in the deal. So I know there's calls for more affordable housing. We want them too, but I think it's important to be realistic about what's possible development by development. And also note that this policy is never going to be the solution to our affordable housing crisis alone. It's designed to bring a few units along every time something market rate gets built so that we're keeping up rather than falling behind. And it is expressly designed to bring affordable housing units online near amenities like good schools, public transit, and grocery stores, which this development would do. And so that's why we're supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the cards I have in support. For opposition, Patricia Perkins. Please say your name and address.
Good afternoon. Patricia Perkins. I actually live at 184 Islander Drive in Slidell, Louisiana. I'm the head of school at Morris Jeff Community School, located at 211 South Lopez Street. Our school is located directly across the street from the current property at 217 South Rendon and 3300 Cleveland Avenue, which is being discussed. I'm here to speak against the development of this property into a multi-housing unit. I know the neighborhood association has avidly opposed this development plan over the past several years. I have a specific concern about having more traffic on South Rendon. Our student buses have to use this street as their thoroughfare. And more importantly, we have students who are wheelchair bound who depend on our buses being able to use this street to get into the bus lane for safe loading and unloading. I'm here to let you formally know that the school is interested in purchasing this property and investing into the development of an educational facility at the site. As you know, New Orleans has recently invested more tax dollars into the addition of 5,000 early childhood seats for our city's children. Our school is very interested in hosting some of those seats. The neighborhood association has also told me numerous times they support the school's vision of recreating additional educational space there. I have met with the owner several times over these past few years, told him this, and even requested that he might consider repurposing the building and investing in our children. We have also offered to purchase the property through a benefactor. I will also add that we recently witnessed people breaking into the property, at which time I notified the owner. We welcome the opportunity for further dialogue with the owner, although the school could not afford to lease the property at a premium rate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
Ms. Perkins?
I have
you
a question, Ms.
questions?
Perkins. Have you all, you had said that you had had a benefactor that wanted to purchase the property. Did you all submit a letter of intent or a purchase agreement to that owner?
We have not, but I think there might be someone here who can speak to that today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Andrea Lee.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Lee. I am a counselor at DePaul Community Health Center, and I have been at 3320 Cleveland Avenue since 1995. And if you could take a moment in time, maybe I'm pitching the counseling part because I'm appealing from the aesthetic and the quality of life in my neighborhood has changed drastically since Hurricane Katrina. It was a very quiet neighborhood. Cleveland goes from one end to the other of the city. So that is a thoroughfare that's constantly being driven on and constantly cars being hit because of the increased sense of traffic. My opposition to it is this. It's been there for a very long time, which indicates that this gentleman has plenty of money to let something sit there that long. That is ridiculous. And in the meantime, that is blighted. My poor neighbor next door has to have someone break into his backyard. So many times this man had to put up booby traps to get the person to cut their hands or whatever to stop coming into his yard. That is ridiculous. Myself, I have nothing in my backyard. I don't even go in my backyard. Why? Because someone is always stealing. This community is congested. It has the VA and it has mental health there. I have no problem with that, but it's not policed. They're walking around doing whatever they want, and I see the drug transactions and everything else. We have Airbnbs. Have one particular owner, has 3. Can't do nothing about that. So we have traffic from people, young people partying. We've even had one Airbnb of his have someone die in it. We have an 80-year-old couple, Mr. and Mrs. Viner, who I love dearly, and they were there before I was. Will be facing the parking part of this development, and that will add less to their quality of life. If you can imagine, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. You got my point.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lee. Next up is Caitlin Yeager.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Yerger. I live at 3319 Palmyra. My property backs up to the back of this building. This is the 3rd time this particular project has been before the CPC. In 2016, for various reasons, they denied their application, including parking issues, inadequate open space around the building, a significant deviation from the neighborhood norm. It would not protect the historic character of the neighborhood. In 2021, they didn't really change their proposal that much, except they added the word affordable, and then CPC approved it with some waivers. First, in regards to parking, I mean, that is definitely an issue. We already had problems with Morris Jeff schools. We have problems with the bus lanes, as has been talked about. I also, sorry, I just lost my whole thing. And I also would like to point out that Dr. Gupta, the developer, owns several other properties in the neighborhood under different LLCs, including one at 2017 to 2021 Canal Street, which is actually formerly an apartment building with parking lot attached that he has left to become blighted. If he is so interested in developing a housing complex, why doesn't he use a building that already was a housing complex instead of turning a gymnasium that has to be completely remodeled into new housing? Also, I would like to point out that at 3300 Bank Street. We just had a recent development. Someone built retail space below with apartments above it. That building has yet to be fully occupied. There are a lot of units left vacant. So maybe large apartment buildings is not what this neighborhood needs. Maybe we need something else. Maybe we need a community center. Maybe we should really explore Morris Jeff buying the property as they've expressed. I think that there are a lot of better options for this place and this building than turning it into a large apartment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jennifer Weissharp.
Jennifer Weissop, 315 South Broad Street. I was here and spoke with you guys last time, so I don't want to reiterate everything, but I will make a couple of points. To the property representative, made a point that, Mr. Gupta owns the property, the school doesn't own the property, so the school can't do whatever they want with it. Well, the reason we're here is that Mr. Gupta has owned this property for 10 years, and what he wants to do with it is not in alignment with the master plan. So he does have to come here and get permission. And when the city has already made the neighborhood and the city have made a significant investment in childhood education, supporting Morris Jeff, it makes sense that you continue that support with the only other available building in the near neighborhood that could potentially support the early childhood portion that the school would like to build out, which would be for children younger than 4 years old. And it is alignment with what the city has passed recently in terms of a millage, as well as various articles that have been passed by the council. I do want to reiterate what the prior speaker said. Subsequent to the last meeting, we did quite a bit of research on Dr. Gupta and the other properties he owns. The 21 unit condominium complex that's in the 2100 block of Canal Street. He purchased that on or about the same time, I believe about 2013, kicked out all the tenants and has now left it sitting there for 10 years. I'm sure I don't need to remind any of you the debacle that's going on with Brown's Dairy. So while we sit here and can talk about nice developments and affordable housing, the reality is that, as I said last time, the city doesn't enforce any of these things. So when you write this person a blank check to completely change the zoning, that is the day that the neighborhood loses and the kids lose, because we have no way to hold this man accountable, just like has just been done in Central City. Those poor people who are now going to be surrounded by, I don't even know how many gigantic Airbnbs. Affordable housing is a crisis in this city, but enforcement of Airbnb is the way that we would actually get to solve that problem.
Thank you. That's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last card is from Miles Chapolino.
Hi, I'm Miles Tropolin. I live at 218 South Norman C. Francis. The gymnasium is immediately behind my house with my wife, Lily. Again, what I said last time is the Mid-City Neighborhood Organization and me and my wife worked diligently after Hurricane Katrina to rebuild Mid-City. One of the things that we knew that we needed was a good school. And what we are working for is to expansion of that school, which is supported by the entire neighborhood and the Mid-City Neighborhood Organization. What we're not supportive of is turning a residential empty lot into a parking lot. That is a great intrusion to that entire neighborhood, that a residential lot is not going to have a house on it, but it's a parking lot. It is an absolute nightmare for anybody who has to live next to that, and that is the Vinings. Mr. Stieg asked me at the last meeting to check into a number of units. I called, they had only 2 units available. Half the units are strictly for homeless. The other half are really geared to veterans who are basically on veterans disability. They do not cater to people who are working and will pay their own their own rent. They really want Social Security disability or a veteran's disability. In terms of a use, in most oppositions to buildings, from my experience, people do not have an alternative use for an empty building. We have an alternative use for this building. We want to expand the public schools. Everybody who's here, who's in the immediate neighborhood, have mentioned the personal sacrifices that they have on a daily basis because of the school or because of the homeless housing in our neighborhood, but we support all of those things. We do not support this development. One other thing, if you look at the 26 development plan, Dr. Gupta proposed 23 units. He's proposing 24 units now. So what he has done,
Mr. Chaplin, it's time.
he's gotten one affordable unit because he's 6.
Thank you. Those are all the cards that I have. That concludes the public hearing portion. Are there any questions for staff or a motion?
Bottle.
Oh, rebuttal. Of course.
Yeah.
Mr. Shorty, would you like some time to rebut? Actually, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Very briefly. I love the altruism that I heard from folks. They have a lot of wonderful ideas of what someone else should do with property that they paid for, and that's theirs. And it would be nice if every property owner just donated it based on altruistic thoughts that other folks come up with their property, but it's his property. And he gets to develop it as according to the statutes and ordinances that this city has. Businesses require some consistency to do business. And that's why you've got ordinances that they can follow and submit plans based on what we've got set up so that they can understand what they can and cannot do. And the city needs tax revenue. And this development will bring tax revenue, much needed tax revenue, to the city coffers. Now, I think I hear this common thread a lot, and sometimes there are developers that do hold property too long, but there's an economics to how this works. The developer tries to find a deal, grabs the property, and then when the developer can work the deal out and finance the deal, he develops the property. So I didn't develop the property fast enough. Okay, you're mad at me because I didn't develop it fast enough. You're also mad now that I'm trying to develop it. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. Development is a business. You try and get the property at the best deal that you can. Then when the time is right and the finances are together and your plan is together, you develop it as per the ordinances that we have. The staff has recommended this, and I would urge favorable approval. Thank you.
Question.
Mr. Shorty, this
Mr.
question.
Shorty. I just want to make clear on the record that I didn't hear anyone suggest that Mr. Gupta donate the property. And I don't know what you meant by that, but and also according to ordinances and laws and books now, this property is zoned and to be used for institutional use, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, staff.
Yeah, so it's a 2-family district, which allows single and 2-family residential by right, along with some institutional use.
Right, so that's why we're here. Not because you enjoy some right that we're trying to keep you from enjoying. I just wanted to make that clear and on the record.
Well, to address the point of altruism and donation, that was what was suggested, that you could just give it to the school for other purposes.
No one suggested that he give the property away. I didn't hear anyone say that.
Thank you, Mr. Shorty. Are there any questions for staff? For a motion?
I have a question for staff. Can you tell me if my understanding is correct? We have this procedure in place for an affordable housing plan development. It calls for a certain percentage of affordable housing, which this developer has met. But are we allowed to consider the effects on the neighborhood and other planning type considerations? Or is it they have the right number of affordable housing units and therefore it must be approved? my understanding is the first, that you have to meet the affordable housing, but then we are consider the overall effect of the development. Is it compatible with the neighborhood? What's the effects of traffic, blah, blah, blah. Am I right in that?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
So otherwise it would be an administrative approval, else it comes here.
Yes, I mean, part of the planning commission's role in this process is to hold a public hearing and consider these factors.
Okay, also, the request here is affordable housing planned development. I guess I'm reading this and I'm having a little trouble with the fact that that is the name of this, but yet it will only provide two. And I'm not suggesting we require more. It's just that I'm wondering whether that is the appropriate name for this request.
You know, the purpose of the tool is to, I think Mr. Giardulo said it well, is to provide an incentive for private development that contains some affordable units in addition to market rate units as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or a motion?
I have a question. Just for context, because I think it's important, we had made commission had recommended deferral to today's meeting so that we could have potentially the principal of the school. So thank you for taking the time. But also to see if there was potentially a path forward. And I've asked the question, has the school actually made a bona fide offer to the developer? I think that's important for context on this particular situation.
Yeah.
Any other questions from commissioners? Any other questions? Well, I just want to thank Dr. Gupta for actually coming back. I think I actually made the motion for deferral so that we can come back and actually talk about it. Although the number for the affordable units is rather at 2 based on that tool, you know, it was my hope that potentially maybe it could be higher, but we heard from the representative due to construction costs. It has not made it a benefit to add more units. And we also heard from the school. I think the conversations that we kind of had were not really germane to what's before us, and what's before us is housing plan development for this actual development. So with that said, and with the due diligence of the Dr. Gupta, I will just move forward with staff's recommendation for approval and put that motion out there.
Mr. Stewart made a motion for approval. Is there a second?
A second.
Commissioner Jordan seconded. Any discussion?
Oh, I'd just like to comment. I'm not going to support this because, yes, I think it's easy to say that a developer takes property and waits until he has a good development to move forward. But 10 years is excessive, and a record of doing this around the city is troubling to me.
I concur with Commissioner Lund. I will also not be supporting this docket.
So I'd like to just add, I think it's a little bit of a close call. I'm not supporting the motion, but my reason is the following. If it weren't for the 2 affordable housing units, this development wouldn't be allowed to proceed, and I would be even more against it because I think it's not good for the neighborhood in terms of its density, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, the only question is, does the 2 affordable housing units tip the scale? And I think the 2 affordable housing units affect the scale. you know, when we asked last time, would like to see more, and that would tip it further. But to me, the 2 affordable housing units for a development that otherwise would be soundly rejected, just the existence of 2 affordable housing units don't tip the scales for me, so I'm voting against.
And for those reasons, I am not going to support the motion either, because it does not at all tip the scales for me, hearing from the neighbors, and I will be voting against.
Is there any further discussion? That will call the question. So 5 nays, 2 yeas, and 1 recusal. Motion to deny passes.
It shouldn't be a recusal. She's just not present.
She's recused herself. She's here. Next is zoning docket 00823.
Yeah, Chairwoman Flick. So that motion did fail. So there is an opportunity for an alternate motion if the commission would like to pass it.
I'm sorry. So there needs to be a second motion. That motion failed. Thank you. Apologies. Is there another motion? That motion did not.
I'll move for denial.
Move for denial by Commissioner Brown. Is there a second?
Commissioner Witry will second, and this pains me because if we have a property that's sitting vacant and we deny this, it's going to be sitting vacant for a while, and that just really leaves me uncomfortable. But I just don't feel like this is the right application in order to move forward.
There's no discussion. We'll call the question. And just for the record, Commissioner Joshi has recused herself. Five yeas, 2 nays, and 1 recusal. Motion for denial passes.
And Madam Chair, I have to recuse on the next item.
Thank you. Commissioner Seeks recused for zoning docket 00823.
Zoning docket 00823 is a request for a zoning change from an HURD1 historic urban 2-family residential district to an HUB1 historic urban neighborhood business district. In addition to a conditional use for a property located at 1784 Pace Street. The site is occupied by a single-story brick frame, small assembly hall in a residential district on a corner lot, as was the subject of zoning docket 4108, in which a zoning change was approved to convert an RS2 single-family residential district to a B1A neighborhood business district. The petition was ultimately approved by motion 08-427 of the City Council of New Orleans on July 24th, 2008. However, the docket did not receive a final approval until 2011 and was never mapped. Therefore, there is no map record of the zoning change. Since the implementation of the CZO in 2015, the zoning district was unilaterally rezoned as an HURD1 historic urban 2-family residential district. In conjunction with the failure to map the zoning change from the residential to commercial for the subject property, the rezoning of the subject property from commercial to residential, or from residential to commercial, now necessitates another zoning change to revert the lot back to a commercial zoning district.
The building is in a residential design style. However, the nature of reception halls tend to be inactive majority of the time and active when events are scheduled. The site is currently developed as a reception hall that has sufficient parking in the rear, and all activities occur inside the building. Therefore, staff finds the rezoning appropriate for this location. Staff is seeking approval of zoning docket 00823, subject to 3 provisos.
Thank you. I have no cards for the zoning docket. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this? Excellent. Just state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Hello, my name is Lina Hunter. My address is 4771 Lenox Boulevard, New Orleans, 70114.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, and I'm here, we're lifelong residents of Algiers. And when we initially saw this property, it had been vacant for a couple of years and it had become an eyesore to the neighborhood. So me and my family got together and tried to do something because it was originally the YMCA in the West, on the West Bank, commercial property. So we originally submitted a request and it was approved, and somewhere along the line, I don't know, things got lost. I don't know, we just had bad luck with the recordings, I guess. But we did have it designated as commercial property, and some kind of way it reverted back to residential while we were still there. So we've been a hub for the community. We have utmost community support. Everyone's glad to see us there because it makes the whole neighborhood looks better, and everything since then has been, everybody's been buying into the neighborhood, fixing up things. It looks a whole lot better because it sits on the corner. And we just want to do everything we can to keep it there, to be there for the neighborhood, because it's something that they need in that neighborhood that's sorely missed.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Staff, the applicant, or motion?
I'll make a motion to approve zoning docket 00823, subject to 3 provisos.
I second.
Any discussion? Not, we'll call the question. Be 7 yeas and 1 recusal. Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Hunter. Next is zoning docket 00923.
Zoning docket 009-23 is a request to amend an ordinance which granted a conditional use to permit a large child care center in 2008 to now authorize the use of the property as a community center in an HU RD2 district. The proposed site is located at the corner of Lazardi and North Roman Streets. The structure located on the property is an institutional structure and has since become vacant. The current proposal is to renovate the structure as a community center used for small community events such as after-school tutoring programs, community gatherings, and neighborhood meetings. Proposed conversion will require only minor changes to fulfill the zoning requirements. The proposal will improve the area by reviving a vacant site into a shared resource for residents as a community center. The staff recommends provisos that would limit the programming to that which complies with the zoning ordinance's definition of community center, as well as limiting hours of operation to those that are typical of community facilities in residential areas. The staff determined that it would be preferable to rescind the existing ordinance with an entirely new ordinance rather than amending it. This is preferable because the existing ordinance, which was adopted under the previous zoning ordinance, contains many outdated references to the previous ordinance. Staff recommends approval of zoning docket 009-23, subject to 6 provisos.
Thank you. Number of cards. We'll start with Miss Lynette Gordon.
Yes, I'm Lynette Gordon, 2439 Manhattan Boulevard, Suite 209, Harvey, Louisiana, 758.
And you have time ceded to you? that correct?
Yes, no one else is speak unless they have any questions that need to be answered. We just want to at least show the number of support that we had.
Thank
But I just wanted to just express to you guys that I've been working in architecture for over 30 years. And for the first time in my career, I went to a NPP meeting that was really just exuberating and really exciting for me, because when I saw the neighborhood support that came out to this meeting was a beautiful thing. Everyone knows the condition of the Ninth Ward right now when I was still in our recovery process. And the thing about it is the Desirous who is spearheading this project are lifetime residents of this community. It's great to be able to see a project like this one. And it was so coincidental because right after Katrina, my firm Spectrum Designs was hired to actually try to bring this daycare center back into a working conditions. And here it is years later, this building being abandoned for so long, and to walk into this building, it's such a beautiful structure on the inside. I'm sorry that they didn't flip through all the pictures to show you some of the other pictures, but it's still such a beautiful building on the inside. There is going to be very little at all renovations. All the renovations that needs to be done are non-structural. So if we can get through this process and prayerful that you will consider the recommendation of staff and allow us to move forward to support this community in different little events and things that they have to do here, so they don't have to go outside of the Ninth Ward like they have to do right now besides the larger center that's up the street. But this is something that's a little bit smaller and quaint, and it to be able to service this community. So with that being said, we're here to answer any questions that you may have, and we're prayerful that you do support the staff's recommendation.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Those are all the cards that I have. Are there any questions for staff or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve zoning docket item 00923. Subject to 6 provided.
A second.
Commissioner Jordan made a motion, seconded by Commissioner Joshi Gupta. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll call the question. Motion passes. Best of luck to you. Thank you so much. Zoning docket 1023.
Zoning docket 1023 is a request for a conditional use to allow a principal bed and breakfast in an HMR2 historic Marigny Treme Bywater residential district. The site is currently developed with a 2-story, single-family 19th century Italianate dwelling. Additionally, there is an on-site guest house. The proposed principal bed and breakfast would contain 7 bedrooms. 6 of the 7 bedrooms will be used as guest rooms. The other bedrooms would be used for the owner or operator for Article 20, Section 20.3.I.2.8 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. A principal bed and breakfast is categorized under the residential use. It is similar in nature to a small hotel, which is considered a commercial use, because there is a requirement that principal bed and breakfast have either an owner or operator living on site. The impact is thought to be less impactful than that of a hotel. The use standard for a bed and breakfast are intended to help mitigate any loud noise or negative impacts that the use could have on the adjacent properties. Further, only one principal bed and breakfast or large residential short-term rental is permitted per block face. This use standard is intended to avoid overconcentration of such uses in otherwise residential areas. According to the Department of Safety and Permits data, there are no other issued licenses for bed and breakfast or large short-term rentals on this block face. Therefore, if no other bed and breakfast or large short-term rentals are operating on the block face, and if the proposed use of the petition site is appropriately operated, the impacts of this particular bed and breakfast on adjacent properties would be limited. The proposal is consistent with the master plan, and the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 1023, subject to 2 provisos.
Thank you. I have one card for Beth Bodenheimer. Do you have any, do you want to come up and say anything?
Just thank you for the consideration. My mom ran it for 35 years before she passed. And so I took it over after her death in 2019.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for considering.
Are there any questions for staff or a motion?
Ma'am, are you the owner operator of the, so you've already been existing as the bed and breakfast
Yes,
operator?
yes. I'm her daughter, Beth Bodenheimer, 547 S.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff or a motion?
I'll move to approve for staff's recommendation. I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Brown, seconded by Commissioner Lund. Is there any discussion? That will call the question. Seven yeas, one nay, motion passes. Next is the master plan future land use map amendment. Applications acceptance.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Over 100 amendments have been proposed for the future land use map prior to the October 14th, 2022 deadline. At the City Planning Commission's December 13th meeting, the Commission voted to add one additional amendment proposal in an area of Algiers adjacent to the Intercoastal Waterway. And at the City Planning Commission's January 10th meeting, the Commission voted to add 4 proposals at the request of Councilmember Thomas and to modify the proposal from the December 13th meeting. And since then, the staff has received another request from Councilmember Freddie King, District C. Would like to honor that request and include one additional site for consideration. We've been able to honor all the late requests because they have come before the planning district meetings that the staff has been holding. And we've at this point completed 2/3 of the meetings. And we'll be able to schedule this this last one for Planning District 4 coming up in March. So the change would be, or the proposal would be to consider a change from mixed use low density, mixed use historic core, residential medium density, and mixed use high density to parkland and open space for the right of way along North Claiborne Avenue between Annette Street and St. Louis Street.
Are we approving this?
You would
A
be,
motion for approval of that.
So a motion, a vote to approve this request would simply put it into the master plan review process for consideration. It's not approving the change.
Thank you. Looking for a motion.
Which we will go ahead and motion.
Second, looking for a second.
Second. Commissioner Lund will second.
Commissioner Witry made a motion, Commissioner Lund seconded. If there's no discussion, you can call the question. Motion passes. The last item for today is the subdivision ratifications.
There is a list of items for your ratifications.
Commissioner Lund. That last.
Madam Chair, there's no further discussion. I approve of the subdivisions.
In for a second, Commissioner Stewart made a motion for approval of subdivision ratifications.
Second it.
Vote your machines. Subdivision ratification
Yeah.
is approved. Looking for a motion to adjourn. That concludes our business for today.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second.
Happy Carnival Week, everyone be safe.
Happy Mardi Gras.
Community.